All right, I believe we're at the top. We're about ready to start. I'm going to introduce everyone. I'll continue to let people in. While I'm doing the introductions, if anybody pops into the chat, Ms. Mendoza, I know you're co-hosting right now, or hosting. You can let them in as well. And then I'll pick it back up when you start. All right, thank you guys for joining us today. You're joining the session, Cultivating Teacher Growth and Community Through Inclusive Practices. We're very excited that you're here to join us today. Here we have with us today Ms. Marie Mendoza, Executive Director of Professional Development at Spring Independent School District. She comes to us with 31 years experience in education, as a teacher, as a specialist, as an administrator, and she's here in her capacity today as Executive Director of Professional Development. With her, her colleagues, we have Michelle Champeau and Taylor Gilly. We'd like to welcome them as well. I'll let you guys get started. Thank you all for joining us.
So thank you so much for that nice introduction. As was stated, my name is Marie Mendoza. I am happy to present the work, the collaborative work that two of my team members have really kind of spearheaded in this department along with me. And so what we're going to do today is walk you through, number one, our 3-year plan for addressing new teachers. You'll get a little information about Spring Independent School District, about our population, our student population, and our professional staff population. We'll walk you through some redesigned systems that we've put in place. And then at the end, if you have some questions or some comments, we will gladly address those. So I'll go ahead and get us started. What you're looking at here is our empowered learning model, which our district has recently put into place. And we want to really look at not just the student from the student lens, but also from the adult learner lens. And so while this talks about the scholar, we really, in our professional development department, are really looking at honing in on these particular skills for our staff members as well. So we look at how do we ignite learning? How do we help those who are in attendance in our professional learning discover and connect? And then most importantly for us, how do we apply that? So our goal is to help educators become responsible and accountable for their professional learning, and then kind of help move ourselves in the direction so that we are all stakeholders and responsible together for our learning. And we particularly pay close attention to that, as you'll see later in the presentation, when we look at new teachers and our mentors and our mentor program that's been redesigned in order to support and retain our teachers, particularly our teachers of color. So our learning goals for this session are threefold. Number one, it is our intent that you'll be able to describe our planning process for systems of support for our teachers of color that are new to the profession or the district. We're going to explain our rationale for our 3-year plan and our goals and look at some of our measures of success for retaining new teachers. And we hope that you'll be able to connect our rationale for our system redesign with our campus-based mentoring program with our intended outcomes. So that's what we hope that you will walk away with. So who are we in Spring? So we are a district that serves pre-kindergarten through 12th grade in a diverse district just north of Houston, Texas. We have 38 campuses, 26 pre-kindergarten through 5th grade elementary schools. We have 7 middle schools, and we have 5 comprehensive high schools. We know that it is imperative that we have access to well-qualified teachers, because that's one of the key pieces when we talk about equitable school systems. So we want to have indicators of equal access for our teachers. In addition to that, because we are in the Department of Professional Learning, Professional Development, We pay very close attention to our Title II funds and making sure that we are supporting in the professional development area. We know that ESSA maintains a federal focus on closing equity gaps with regards to student access to expert, experienced teachers. And so that is critical as we begin to focus on our student population I just mentioned. So let's take a little deeper look at our student population. As I said, we're just north of Houston, so you can see just in general student in terms of our students, we have just over 35,000 students total, so we are considered a large urban district. We have about 38.4% of our students which self-identify or their families identify as African American. You see our Asian population, and then our other large demographic group is our Hispanic group as they self-identify at 48.4%. You can see our at-risk and is at about almost 63%, economically disadvantaged 82.6%, and our Title I is at 72.4%. We also have this other demographic, as many of us do across the country, which are our students who are acquiring English as a second language. And in Texas, we offer both bilingual and ESL services, and we have just over almost 10,000 of those students at 28% of our total student population that falls in that category. So now let's talk about our staff population. So when we look at our professional staff, we have about 60.1% of our total staff in the district that fall in that category. We have just over 2,100 teachers at 40% of our population. Our total minority staff for the district is about 73.6%. So while we've heard over the course of the last couple of days that many districts struggle or have a focus on making sure that we have enough diversity in terms of our staff, I think our district is doing a pretty good job of recruiting teachers who fall in various demographic categories, how they self-identify. Our goal is to make sure that we just don't attract, but that we maintain and grow them. So that's part of what we'll talk a little bit about. You can see that about 40% of our teaching staff self-identifies as African American, about 21.6% of our staff self-identifies as Hispanic, and then you can see the other demographic groups represented. This comes from our TAPER report. Anyone across the country can find that, our Texas Academic Performance Report for 2019-20, which came out in November of 2020. So that's our staff information. So now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. These are our teachers. So when we look at our teacher demographic, we have about 18% of our teachers who fall in that category of beginning, 0 years, right? So 395.3 is what was on that report, but about 395 teachers fall in that category. Then you can see our 1 to 5 year teachers, and we have done some work with those teachers as well, about 621, 28%, and then you can see the rest. Here's the key piece that we want to really share with you that we've been focused on, and that is that teacher turnover rate. So we had about 26% teacher turnover, and our statewide turnover rate, as you can see, was listed there at 16.8. So what have we done about that? We want to make sure that we are creating culturally affirming school environments. We want to affirm teachers' humanity and racial identity. So you'll notice in my language, I use a lot of how people self-identify. We want to make sure that we aren't putting labels on people, that they are doing that, identifying themselves. We want to support and empower and of course invest in our teacher. We'll build that school-wide family, and all this was, all of those pieces we've looked at And we've tried to build that into our system here. So you can see who we are in terms of our demographic group. Our district has been focused on for quite some time, about, I would say, I've been here almost 6 years, but we've been engaged in this continuous improvement process whereby we're looking at our systems and structures and we're constantly evaluating and modifying. And so when I first got to the district, I was the director of multilingual programs, and we were, providing training and support for teachers who were new to the district. And because our EL population was such a large group, we did training and professional development in the summer. So there you see just a snippet of a picture of us doing the work with our new teachers then. What we focused really on then was looking at a redesign, because here's what we noticed. We were doing professional learning, we were talking to our new teachers, and we were not, you could see our turnover rate. So what we tried to do was reevaluate what's our system of support and what are some things that we need to do professional. And when we talk about professional development in spring, we're not just talking about the content, we're talking about the classroom environment. We developed something called Springway Systems and Routines. And so we want to help all of our teachers, but particularly our new teachers to spring, in number one, understanding our student demographic and how to work with our students and their families, and how do we ensure that what we've taught is retained and then implemented in such a way that will yield the results that we are wanting. So we understood the need to recruit, to support and sustain, what's key here, culturally responsive teachers who are prepared to work with our students. And so in just a little bit, our my other colleagues will kind of share a little bit more about that. So one of the things that we did was, and this really just happened at the beginning of this year, we looked at our professional learning. And while we had lots of people attending our one day here or one day there, it was really not the system that we needed in order to ensure that there was deep understanding of the content, whatever the content happened to be, and that we were monitoring and supporting as they implemented, so that we could kind of, if we needed to, help guide if there were any misconceptions that were learned, and then provide them a safe space where they can say, this isn't working. I don't know what I'm doing. I sat in that session and we didn't understand. So we've created a system for that. So what you're looking at is our year-long professional learning cycle. So what we've done is we've created a professional learning catalog, and each one of those sessions that are included in that catalog is built around 3 professional learning opportunities, all connected. So you'll see it at the top, our initial professional learning day 1. So and we have about 13 people in our professional learning department. So we will provide that professional learning day 1, and this model is used for our nurses, for transportation across the system, not just the content pieces. So initial quality professional learning day 1 or module 1, it could be an hour session or a 2-hour session, but that's the term that we've used. In between day 1 and day 2, you will notice that there is a phase 1 implementation. So day 1, let's say, happens January 15th. Day 2 is not until February 15th, let's say. In between January 1 and February 15th, or January 15th and February 15th, there's an implementation phase. So we present our new information. They all nod, yes, we got it, we got it. In between that time, it's an expectation that our participants go back and implement something that was learned during day one. And when they come back to day two, they bring artifacts of their implementation. So sometimes that might look like a video, that might look like of students, teacher implementing and then practicing various types of artifacts, which the other two ladies will explain in just a little bit. They come back to day two, they share that's built into our system. They share what they implemented and the artifact, and then they receive additional information. And then we go in between day two and day three, again, another phase in portion where they are having the opportunity to practice what they learn, implement, and then for day three, again, they bring back the artifacts and they share. You'll see out to the side some sample artifacts if you're looking at it through a teacher lens. Our nurses have used this, and there have been other artifacts that they've brought back. Then there's a phase, so they come to day three, additional learning, and then there's an expectation again that they have some phase-in implementation, and then they send that back to us, and then there's a formative evaluation, and that's the presenter, right? So then we are looking at all of the artifacts that have been collected, and we say, is there something that we need to do differently to meet the needs of our staff? If so, we might make some adjustments in that professional learning slide deck or in our work. And if not, great, we move on to the next. We've confirmed mastery, or we might need to say, what do we need to do differently? So the key piece here is, it's not they didn't get it and there was something wrong. It's what do we need to do to change our practice to be clearer, to make sure that we get mastery. And so that is our professional learning cycle. Goes back to this. We are constantly looking at our continuous improvement cycle, right? So we're collecting data, we're analyzing our strengths and barriers with this model. We are looking at improvement plan, setting some goals for revision, and then we select some strategies to help move in that direction, and then we're implementing, and we're monitoring. So that is our system. What you see on the other slide is our new leadership definition. And the reason I've added this to our slide presentation is we have three major categories that we're looking at in terms of leadership. We believe in Spring that everyone is a leader. So you're either a leader of yourself, a leader of others, or a leader of leaders, right? There's all of these things. But within that, there are three things that we're looking at. We're looking at how are we outcome driven? How are we relationship centered, right? And how are we, sorry, I just went. Oh no, oh, sorry. I'm sorry, what did I just miss? Oh, I'm sorry, and service oriented, sorry. Okay, so outcome driven, service oriented, and relationship centered. So those are the three areas of leadership, and we're helping all of our teachers, number one, feel like they're included. And if they're not, and we got some feedback from a session that took place this morning, where there was a new teacher who was like, I don't want to tell you who I am, and things are not going well, but please, I'm just going to suffer through this where you don't reach back out to us. Well, of course, we're not going to let that happen, because we're all about being relationship centered. But this is our focus in Spring: outcome driven, service oriented, and relationship centered. And how are we, no matter what our title, no matter where we sit in the organization, how are we developing each other as leaders and making people feel included? And so what I'm going to do next is turn this over to Taylor, and Taylor's going to walk us through what we have done in Spring in developing new teachers, and pay close attention to our 3-year model here and then we'll come back to it at the end of our session. So Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, everybody. I'm really, really honored to be here with Marie and my counterpart, Michelle, and all of you today on this Good Friday Eve. First of all, I'd like to say, because we are service oriented, I have already reached out to that first year teacher and engaged in a dialogue with her about what's going on in her class. So I just thought I'd start with that. If you work for a school district currently and you have the number of first year teachers you are serving this year, if you would drop that in the chat, I'd be interested to know how many first year precious angel babies do you have under your wing at this time? If you know that number, drop it in the chat. Just curious. On the next slide, we're going to talk about that 3-year induction plan. What was really great is that we kind of got the green light. Michelle and I have worked together in some capacity in Spring ISD for like the last 6 years. My entire career has been in Spring ISD. And so Michelle and I have worked in different capacities all the way back to where I was a lead mentor on a campus, and Michelle was my district admin, to now we get to partner, and that we got the green light to really build an induction program that, through just research and experience, we know is what's going to be best for teachers. Michelle's going to talk a little bit about the redesign, but what I want to talk about is our first year teachers and the support that we're providing them. So we drafted out 3 separate layers of support, just depending on the years of experience. So we have a teacher who's a level 1 at less than a year of experience, okay? Because that helps us capture those first year teachers who were hired in January, okay? We provide them with a campus-based mentor. Michelle's going to talk about that. But we've also created a cohort, if you will, called New Teacher Academy, NTA for short. And we have different benefits from being a member of NTA. We capture those. Oh, well, that's on the next slide. I'll stay on this slide for just a second. We have a Schoology course built for those New Teacher Academy members. We have monthly sessions that I'll talk about. We build a newsletter. And as you see, through level 1, 2, and 3, the support gets smaller and smaller. But even in year 3, we still have a designated buddy who's checking in with that teacher, and individualized support if needed. That's key. If we have a teacher who has already had their first year, but possibly they changed content areas, or maybe they just struggled and they just need some extra support, we have the autonomy now to assign them a campus-based mentor for another year if they need it. And so that was really one of the key takeaways for me, was that we have the freedom to do this because this is in-house, right? We're using our own talent here in Spring ISD to help support these first year teachers. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how we built this New Teacher Academy. So we capture our first year teachers through our new hire orientation. Michelle and I are 2 peas in a pod. We're a package deal. We're a yin and a yang. It's a very nice co-working relationship. So we also do our new hires who come through and just kind of orient them to our systems and our routines and the things that they'll need on a daily basis. So we also establish first year teachers through that, and extend an invitation to our New Teacher Academy, where we have monthly sessions, which are also professional learning. So we have artifacts like Marie talked about in that PD cycle that she showed you. We also collect survey data from our first year teachers. So for example, we found through a preliminary survey in December that if asked in December whether or not they would stay in Spring ISD next year, 80% of our teachers said that they would stay in Spring ISD next year. 20% said that they would be seeking opportunities elsewhere. Of that 20%, 10% said they would be seeking other career choices, that perhaps teaching wasn't the career for them. So we're hoping to drop that number, because what we're also seeing is that when teachers aren't prepared for their environment, when teachers aren't coached in new environments, particularly in our urban school centers, they think that they've made a bad career choice, when in actuality, they just were entering a world with which they were unfamiliar. So we're trying to help lower that number. We'll go to the next slide. I'll show you how we're doing that. We have mandatory and optional sessions for our teachers. The mandatory sessions, we really want to get them in there because they highlight key aspects of a new teacher's career that are important to open up space for great dialogue. So for example, this morning we had Speak Up at School. That's through the Teaching Tolerance organization through Southern Poverty Law Center, about speaking up against bias and injustice whenever you see it in your school and in your classroom and in just your everyday lives. I made that session mandatory because I think that that is something that we all need. I even invited my office coworkers to sit in on it with us. And I partnered with our Student Support Services Executive Director to bring in a partner, because we're going to be discussing the isms, right? And I wanted to make sure that I had a partnership and someone co-presenting that also gives representation to other departments in our district. It's also free because they work here. So we're utilizing our talent that we have here on staff. I did culturally responsive pedagogy with one of our HR officers. She brought a really great presentation from when she was doing presentations on campus, and we partnered together. I did class rules that work based on PBIS, and we asked them to bring back an artifact, which I'll talk about in just a second. But then we also made some of the sessions optional. So sessions in November and December, sessions in April, when we're in testing season here in Texas, those sessions are optional. And what we do is we bring some meditation, we bring some mindfulness, self-care tips. I'm doing token economies in April, but I'm also thinking after my session today, we also have the autonomy to move and adjust based on the needs of our teachers. And I also have the autonomy to open up some space if our new teachers need to vent. I'm going to be opening up some sessions at the end of this month and in March and in the beginning of April. And I'm probably going to open them up from 6 to 8 p.m. in the event a teacher wants to go home and take that call from home. In the event that they need to, and I will probably be at my home, in the event that they need to share confidentially. And again, we have the added layers of support where we have direct access to these first year teachers and we can reach out. Okay, next slide. I'm gonna pop in 45 new teachers from Katie Strauss, 225 new teachers. Miss Aversa, you beat me. We have 189 first year teachers. We have a lot of future plans. We want to do more when the world reopens. We want to do snack and chats where Michelle and I take some goodies, take some food, and go pop in to different schools that perhaps have large numbers of first year teachers and just sit, chat, talk, vent, whatever you need to do. We're pulling small focus groups right now, but from those could be campus-based supports where we tailor the professional learning, pun intended, we tailor the professional learning to the needs of that campus. One of our campuses has over 10 first year teachers. They may need specialized PD and we can provide that. And then we're continuing with, we have a year one cohort. This is our first year of doing the new teacher academy. Next year, I will circle back with the teachers from this new teacher academy. I'll circle back with those teachers next year in the fall and in the spring just to check in, see how they're doing. I'll survey them and I'll pull some small focus groups. So we've got some in-house research going on, but our preliminary research is trending in a really good way. I know I had the one feedback of the stress teacher this morning, but we got some really good feedback from my Speak Up at School session this morning. Teachers are already turning in their artifacts. I linked an article that aligned with that, and they are responding to the article, and we're getting a lot of good feedback. So we have big plans. We want to keep going and collecting more data, but we're trending in a way that our retention or our turnover percentages is going to go down, because research shows that if we can just hang on to them and get them through year 2, support them through year 3, then we may have captured them for the rest of their career. So that's where we're heading now. The next slide is going to take us to the yin to my yang, Michelle Champeau, my next door neighbor.
Thank you, Taylor. All right. So good afternoon. I am one of the lead development specialists in Spring ISD. You just received Taylor Gilley, who is the other one. And I have the role of presenting what mentoring in Spring ISD looks like, okay? So if you'll take a moment in the chat, if you have a mentoring program in your district, can you please place a 1 if your mentors are at the district level? And if they're at the campus level, right, then could you place a number 2 in there? And my colleague Taylor will take a look at that. You know, it's always interesting to see and to learn how others have developed their mentor program in their districts to offer that new teacher support, right? So we're just always interested, and we'd like to see how districts across the nation, right, through this platform are utilizing the role of the mentor.
Getting a lot of 2s.
Wow.
5
Okay.
2s so far.
All right. Next slide, Marie. So at the district level, we really had to take a hard look at exactly how we were serving new teachers to the profession within Spring ISD. Our retention rate was not where we wanted it. You know, in our district, we want new teachers to grow with us. We want all teachers in general, right, to stay with us and to stay in the profession ultimately. But not only that, we want them to want to stay, right? It's not just that we want them to stay. We want them to want to stay, right? So I think this is what everyone is after. This is all of our goal, right? So we had to reevaluate the district induction program, the support structure that we have. And so we had to ask ourselves a very difficult question. And it was something like this. Do we have the support structure in place that will drive the desire for new teachers to want to grow in our district and want to stay? Well, unfortunately, the answer was no. And that's hard. That's hard because each year we think we're doing such a great job, but that's what data was for. And, you know, the data speaks loud and clear. So we had to come to the table and we had to have a heart-to-heart conversation and start those hard conversations centered around redesign. Okay, next slide, Marie. So the system that we previously had in place included district level coaches, which is why I asked that question in the chat, right? Because it's always interesting to see the different support systems that are in place. So in other words, we did not have mentors on our campuses. Our district coaches at the district level were our mentors, were our coaches. So the district coaches were provided a cohort of new teachers because we didn't have enough coaching positions to assign the 1-to-1 ratio, right? They had a cohort instead. So they were asked to create a schedule based on the number of the new teachers that they were assigned. And so think about this, all right? So they were still responsible for all the best practices that we know occur, right? Coaching, mentoring, observing, modeling, providing that feedback, and so much more. But because of the numbers of new teachers that any given district coach had, it could have been, well, it was very difficult for the district coach to visit perhaps their new teacher once a week. In some cases, they were only able to get out cyclically to their teachers maybe twice a week. And in some very hard to say data, maybe every third week, right? So they had to go on a rotation to make sure that they were servicing and supporting and offering that support based on the numbers that they had. Okay, so we knew that we were missing a very important piece of the puzzle here in our induction program, and that was that ability to for the mentor and mentee to establish a strong and trusting relationship. Okay, so we were given the opportunity reevaluate the mentoring systems that we had in place, right? And we were given an opportunity to develop a system that would provide a more systemic approach to the role of the mentor. Okay. Great. Okay, so at the district level, you can see in this slide, thank you, Marie, we developed mentor qualifications that were in line with what we knew were best practices and with what we needed as a district. Okay, you can see in this slide right here that we were looking for experienced mentors with a minimum of 5 years teaching experience, and that they had experience in building those strong, trusting relationships that we know are needed, right? And so they had to be knowledgeable in best practices for the curriculum, for the instruction, assessment, and they needed to be very accomplished in classroom management skills, and in particular in urban school settings, because we know, and this is still valid today, that one of the main reasons a new teacher will become stressed and upset and want to leave the profession is because of classroom management. So we know that we need to have a very strong support system in that area. So we needed to look for mentors who clearly had that under control so that they could act as the role model, right? And in some cases push in to model what that looks like for them. Okay, thanks. So once we identified who our master mentors were, we established guidelines, okay, for the major responsibilities and duties, which you see in this slide right here. We asked that they attend ongoing monthly mentor training and that they were to meet 1 to 2 times a week, and that these meetings would be documented, right? They would be documenting the sessions, and we call our document a learning focused conversation log. We're very proud of that. So the law pretty much provides that platform for the mentor and mentee to have a focused coaching mentor session. So having something concrete like that avoids the drive-by mentoring that probably you guys are all familiar with. You know, hey, Taylor, how's it going? Great, I'm good. Okay, see you later. Drive-by mentoring, right? So we knew that that's what was happening. So we sought out something that we could put in place that was more directive in establishing a real coaching conversation, okay? So we know that the relationships that our mentors have built with their mentees, it goes way beyond the chart that you're looking at. You know, we know that. I'm sharing with you, you know, this chart here, but, you know, ultimately we ask our mentors, you know, day by day, it will be something different. We can't have an all-inclusive list of what you might unconditionally be mentoring for. But in our district, we do say that we do whatever it takes. And sometimes that is to unconditionally mentor. Okay, thank you, Marie. So the next slide here illustrates an overview of what our mentor support structure looks like. So you can see to the far left, it shows that the district level of support, it's the district level of support, which starts with the lead development specialist, which is my role, which is Taylor's role, right? And you can see that we're responsible for providing that summer professional learning, right? That's tied to what the needs of our spring ISD teachers need. We provide that monthly meeting, right, with the mentors that check in, the virtual chats that we do every month, assisting campuses with their needs, and just offering very tailored support, campus by campus as needed. Okay, and of course, this is a small glimpse of that role. Now, the blue portion in the center of the graphic represents campus administrative support. So we needed to build this piece in, because there are times throughout the year that we need an administrator to take care of administrative items within the program. For example, we do offer a small, never enough, supplement pay for our mentors, right? And so the lead mentor or the campus teacher is not the one that would sign off on the money, right? So we have to have that campus administrative liaison to periodically step in, right? And then the last portion is also a layer of campus support. We have a lead on every campus in Spring ISD. In some cases, it is the principal of the campus. In some cases, they ask someone to do that role for them, someone that they trust, right? Or someone who has done something similar like this, or just someone who is passionate about mentoring. So that person, that campus lead, is the person that I primarily communicate with, because they act as a liaison between the district program and the campus, right? So they are that go-between, and they help at the district level, make sure that the district expectations are met. Okay. Thank you, Marie.
Right. So you've had an opportunity to listen to a little bit about how we have restructured our professional learning, how we have restructured our support from our development specialists and our coaches, and how we have structured our mentoring program. We'd like to hear from you now as you begin to think about what are some issues that you have been facing when it comes to this whole notion of inclusive practices. So if you would, in the chat, type an issue, and if there's anything that we've presented today that has made you think, maybe we should try something like this. So what's an issue? What have you done with that issue? And then was there anything from today that you're beginning to think, I'd like some more information about that. So if you could take just a minute to type that in the chat. And I'll ask Taylor and Michelle, you guys are monitoring the chat.
Yep. I'd also like to give Michelle just a little bit more credit with the tailored support piece from the lead development specialist perspective, because I'm housed right next to Michelle. We're not campus-based. We're here at one of our district buildings. She's on the phone all the time with individual mentors, walking them through situations. What do we need to say? Here's the problem that I have. I'm struggling with this. Or the campus administrative liaison. She was on the phone with several people in December trying to get our mentors paid before Christmas. So the tailored support that we offer really goes deeper than just communication and email and administration and PD. If times are different, we jump in our car together and run over to a campus and do a face-to-face, but we spend a lot of time on the phone with our folks.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Taylor, because one of our key areas is that relationship building. We know that new teachers, or teachers in general, particularly teachers of color, when there is someone that they have built a relationship with, that they know that they can reach out to, that's part of what makes them want to stay in an organization, or if it's absent, want to leave. So we are very focused on those areas of leadership development, and that one is one of the key pieces. Mm-hmm. So is there any, can we see what's—
There's nothing in the chat so far. I put our feedback form in the chat if anybody wanted to get on with that, but we don't have that many folks on. So if anybody wants to unmute. And yeah, you don't have to type it. If you want to unmute and ask a question or share something that you heard that resonated with you, we've got some minutes.
I have a question.
Okay.
What are the requirements for year one teachers in your state? Like we have, and I'm in Delaware, year one teachers, we have a 4-year mentoring program. So some of the stuff we're already doing just because it's embedded in what's required for the state. But then the state obviously has like all these other requirements that sometimes are a lot for the new teacher to balance, like the mentoring program and then additional certification testing or an ethics program, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to hear what the state requirements were for year one teachers in your state.
Well, they do require that they have a mentor for the first year. That is a requirement. They have, of course, their content exams and their professional pedagogy exam, and they just added a new exam. And I haven't had a lot of time to look into that, but they just added a new exam. But as far as state mandates, Marie, I don't think there's really that much detail other than they must be provided a mentor.
Right. So we have the autonomy to structure our mentoring program. So that's why before we're like, okay, we have these district level development specialists. There were a number of them. And then we assign teachers to them. We have the autonomy to do that. But then when we took a look at that, the caseload that each one of those development specialists had was way too many in order to build that relationship and really provide the necessary support so that their students were achieving those high outcomes and they felt like they were being successful in their job. So we had the opportunity then to restructure what that looks like. So we're required to offer or make sure they have a mentor, but we have the autonomy to kind of structure what that looks like. And so in spring, that's why we were able to make that change. We also were looking at teachers who were not just first year, we had 0 to 3 year. And so that was part of the challenge, like they were all getting the same amount of support. And so that's the other reason that we had to pull back and say, okay, if you're in year 1, these are all the supports that will take place. If you're year 2, you still get support, but it looks a little different. And then if you're in year 3, again, a little less on paper, but we still maintain that relationship. So that's the difference here in Texas.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, so we're going to move to our next slide. And this is just a quote from the Teach Plus president that I found that I really believe kind of connects with the work that we're doing here. So we know that we need to work together to tear down those barriers that keep our talented teachers of color from staying, growing, and thriving in our profession. And so we are very conscious of the steps that we're taking to respond, just as Roberto Rodriguez mentioned in his statement. We are focused on maintaining relationship, building their capacity, not just with their content, but to connect with their students and their families and community, and then to connect with colleagues on campus as well. We know because of our diverse student population, this is a necessity. And so again, we go back to looking at our continuous improvement cycle. Is this a perfect model? No. Are we constantly reevaluating and looking at our data? We're looking at the artifacts that our teachers are submitting and our other staff members are submitting to make sure that we are articulating what needs to be articulated so that they get a deeper understanding of our curriculum design, our delivery methods, our classroom management, and our springway systems and routines. So all of those pieces are kind of going together, and we're letting them know at every level of the organization, you are a leader. And these are the pieces that we're wanting to stay focused on. How are we outcome driven? How are we service oriented? And then how are we relationship centered as we build and mold and support those in our teaching profession? So here is our contact information. For more information, my name again is Marie Mendoza, and then Taylor and Michelle. I believe I've shared the contents of the PowerPoint. And so with Dana, and so I think that will be shared. I'm not quite sure, but we thank you for coming after the keynote today, because that was phenomenal. I was like, wow, we have to follow him. But we are so pleased that you were able to join us and stay with us for our session.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Yes, absolutely. We'll have all the anything that was used within the sessions will be put on a drive that they'll send you an email, so you'll have access to everything. So
excellent. Right. If there are no other questions or comments, I think we are finished with our session for the
Leave us some feedback. We put the link in the chat. So leave us some feedback about how we did today. Thank you, guys.